I'm Adrian, the cruise and travel guy, and I've just returned from my first cruise on board one of the world's oldest and most traditional cruise lines. And in this review, I'll tell you why it wasn't one of my favorites, and the reason might surprise you. Cunard's roots date back all the way to 1840. It has a fascinating history steeped in the tradition of ocean liner travel, class systems, and formality. Currently, the line operates a fleet of only 3 ships, but later this year will be joined by Queen Anne, the cruise line's first new ship in almost 15 years. I sailed on board the current newest ship in the fleet, the 2010-built Queen Elizabeth. You might recognize some of her external and structural styling cues, being that she's closely related to the Spirit and Vista class ships of company stablemates Holland America, Costa, and Carnival. If you're wondering what Carnival has to do with Cunard, well, the answer is basically everything. Carnival Corporation purchased Cunard in 2008, and although the line is still headquartered in the UK, on board its ships the currency of use is US dollars. While Queen Mary II remains the world's only true ocean liner, having been built primarily for speedy transatlantic crossings, Queen Victoria, Queen Anne, and Queen Elizabeth, the ship I sailed on, are firmly recognized as cruise ships. While they're not ocean liners, Cunard's cruise ship queens have been designed with particular amenities that recognize the line's ocean liner history. For example, the entire top forward deck of Queen Elizabeth is reserved for sports and recreation, but with activities you're more likely to find in a private club on land than at sea. There's croquet, lawn bowls, pickleball, and of course, table tennis. It's all very civilized, and I could easily imagine spending my days playing deck sports while traveling between the old and new worlds via ocean liner. Queen Elizabeth might be somewhat related to her Carnival Corporation stablemates, but she exudes a traditional elegance and beauty that is truly spectacular. Her interiors are gorgeous, with Art Deco styling cues, elaborate timber work, luxurious finishes, grand staircases, and vast public rooms. That elegance and tradition does extend to a sense of formality on board, and one of the questions I've received most is about the dress requirements. Cunard previously ditched formal and semi-formal nights for gala nights and smart attire nights instead. Gala nights occur roughly twice during each 7-night period on board and have taken the place of the formal evenings of old. From 6 p.m. on gala nights, and in Cunard's own words, evening wear of dinner jackets, tuxedos, dark suits with regular or bow ties, floor-length dresses, cocktail dresses, smart trouser suits, or formal separates are all welcome. Rather than being a night of ball gowns and tuxedos, the dress on board is quite wide and varied, and provided it fits within that description, most on board are happily involved. The exception to this is on transatlantic voyages, where gala nights do require the formality of tuxedos and floor-length gowns. On non-gala nights, the dress code is for smart attire, which again in Cunard's own words extends to smart collared shirts, evening tops, trousers, skirts, and dresses, while jackets are optional. For those that are seeking a more relaxed evening on board than is prescribed by the smart attire or gala night events, then people can dress casually in certain venues on board, including the Lido Buffet restaurant, the casino, and a number of bars and lounges. However, after 6 p.m, shorts, sports attire, swimwear, or sleeveless shirts are not allowed anywhere on board except for the gym, spa, and outdoor deck spaces. Whilst the days of steerage and first class are over, most cruise lines have since adopted a ship within a ship system that sees a number of different facilities and amenities provided to people based on the type of stateroom that they book. On Cunard ships, there are effectively 3 classes of travel. It starts with interior, ocean view, and balcony staterooms, which fall under the Britannia name. Then mini suites, which come under the Princess Grill title, and then full suites, which are known as Queen's Grill accommodations. For this cruise, we sailed in one of the ship's Princess Grill staterooms. Above and in the description below, I've included a link to my room tour of a very unique Princess Grill suite. And quickly, you might be wondering why Cunard's suite class is named after a cooking implement. The story is actually pretty fascinating and dates back to the early 1900s, when, in response to German line Hapag's introduction of a specialty restaurant, Cunard introduced their own restaurant but made it exclusively available for their first-class guests. The venue featured grilled meats as a staple, and over time, the grill name stuck and became associated with the elevated dining experience that was included for guests staying in one of Cunard's so-called grill suites. And today it continues. Apart from the accommodations, there are a number of notable differences between Britannia, Princess Grill, and Queen's Grill. Priority embarkation and disembarkation, an in-suite coffee machine, complimentary spring water replenished throughout the voyage, and the ability to order room service dining from the Princess or Queen's Grill restaurants. Queen's Grill guests even have the addition of a butler, among other things. Those grill restaurants happen to be one of the most significant perks of booking a Princess or Queen's Grill stateroom, where Britannia guests have access to a 2-level main dining room with both traditional and anytime dining options. Princess Grill and Queen's Grill guests have access to their own restaurant and a lounge cum bar with concierge service. These are located midship on deck 11 and accessible via the central stairs or via the elevators after scanning your cruise card. There are 2 grills restaurants, essentially mirror images of each other, one reserved for Queen's Grill and one for Princess. Compared to the more energetic space in the Britannia restaurant, the Grills restaurants are intimate spaces. Grills travelers have their very own table that is reserved for them throughout the entire voyage, which means they don't need to make a reservation to dine and can simply head to the restaurant when hunger strikes, anytime that it's open at breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It's worth noting that Britannia Club is a 4th option for travelers on board Queen Elizabeth. Slotting between Britannia and Princess Grill, it gives guests access to a private dining room off the main Britannia restaurant, with the benefit of an exclusively reserved table for the entire cruise. Special club balcony rooms can be booked to gain access to the club restaurant. For us, priority boarding meant we completed check-in within minutes, and after a short wait for ship clearance, we were among the first guests to board. After settling in, we went straight to the Grills restaurant for lunch, and it made for an incredibly relaxing way to start our short break on board. The menu in the Princess Grill restaurant differs slightly from the Britannia restaurant. There are items available in both, but there was also a range of additional main courses such as Chateaubriand and Duck à l'Orange that could be ordered in the Grills restaurant during lunchtime for that evening's dinner. The food was also prepared in a separate galley. Overall, it was good without being exceptional, and while the menu felt more classical than contemporary, I think that's to be expected. On the food front, Queen Elizabeth offers a huge range of included fare. Starting with the aforementioned Britannia, Princess and Queen's Grill restaurants, there is also the Lido buffet. Additionally, the Lido Grill was open from lunchtime to early evening on the aft pool deck and offered freshly made burgers, hot dogs, and French fries among other lighter options. The Golden Lion pub also offered a casual sit-down lunch or dinner with a la carte items such as pies and fish and chips. Cafe Corinthia also offered freshly baked pastries every morning, as well as lunch specialties in the early afternoon, and for those that wanted to dine in the comfort of their stateroom, they could do so with 24-hour room service. Specialty dining consisted of the steakhouse at the Veranda and bamboo at the Lido, although I didn't have the opportunity to try either during our 3-night voyage. Additionally and famously, Cunard offers its daily afternoon tea service between 3 and 4 p.m. Traditionally held in the stunning Queen's Room, particularly busy cruisers will see an overflow afternoon tea held in the Britannia restaurant. Grills passengers were able to enjoy tea in the Princess Grill restaurant on deck 11. We managed it once, and it was a lovely experience that I think is a rite of passage for any first-time Cunard traveler. Cunard promises a world of comfort, courtesy, and attention to detail with world-class services and amenities. According to the cruise line's website, White Star service is described as never stuffy or hurried, but friendly while not being overly familiar. Knowing these details and understanding that they were advertised service qualities of the Cunard brand, I admit that I went into this cruise with certain expectations. Having cruised frequently across different cruise lines, I know that service levels can vary. And honestly, sometimes people just have a bad day and that might reflect in their work. Generally, when reviewing cruises, I don't focus too heavily on negative service interactions unless they were particularly significant or did affect the overall cruise experience. This was a case of the latter. While there were a few exceptions across the ship, the crew generally seemed unhappy. I spoke with others on board who felt similarly, so I know this wasn't an isolated impression. I have huge respect for crew members on board cruise ships. They work incredibly hard for months and months so that we can enjoy our holidays. They contribute greatly to the sense of enjoyment we get when we cruise, so it was really obvious to me that something was off on board Queen Elizabeth. Many of the crew members I spoke with seemed flat, some were curt, and others were just downright rude. In one particular case, an older female cruiser approached a bar to order a drink. The bartender put his hand in her face, told her that there were other drinks in the queue, and that she should take a seat so that a waiter could take her order instead. That was a challenge in itself, as there were times when you couldn't find a waiter, and when you did, it felt like they were actively avoiding coming over. That isn't true of every experience on board, but it was so significant and happened so frequently that I had to mention it. These issues altogether contributed to the feeling that our presence was some sort of imposition. I heard through secondhand reports that regular Cunard cruisers noticed a general issue with service levels on board. And not having cruised previously with Cunard myself, I have to imagine the experience is generally better. I did wonder if a 3-night cruise over a weekend attracted an atypical crowd for the cruise line and the crew maybe just weren't prepared for that. But I also know that I've had much better service on other cruise lines, including P&O, which is effectively a budget cruise line, and Carnival. In terms of things to do on board, cruise ship favorites like bingo, trivia, bridge, blackjack and dart tournaments, art classes, dance classes, lectures, documentaries, and films were all available during the day and early evening. There was plenty to do with a packed schedule, giving guests a multitude of options to choose from. By night, musicians and singers would play to guests across the ship in different lounges and bars, helping set the mood for an evening on the high seas. Main showtime in the Royal Court Theatre saw production shows and guest entertainers perform at both 8 and 10 p.m. allowing passengers to make it to either show after dinner. I was impressed by the number of activities available on board. This is a cruise line that knows about sea days, and that's not surprising. Between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, most of the ship's venues would close if they hadn't already. Upon leaving the dance floor in the yacht club one night, we attempted to find a nightcap at another venue, but everything was either shut or in the process of shutting, and the only option was to return to the yacht club, which we didn't do, thanks to the incredibly hot temperature inside. For Australian travellers in particular, it's important to note that while other cruise lines that operate from Australian ports tend to include service fees or tips in their fares, better reflecting our local customs, Cunard does not. Passengers are charged a daily per-person gratuity of US $14.50 per person per day for those traveling in Britannia staterooms, and US $16.50 per person per day for those traveling in grill suites. In addition, bar purchases incur a 15% service fee on top of the amount spent. The daily program was provided every night during turndown, and after sailing on board Virgin Voyages recently, I was reminded how much I love to thumb through the list of activities and events that are being held the next day. I purchased Cunard's brand new Starlink internet service, opting for the premium tier, which set me back about $100 for 3 nights. The speed though was fantastic, and I had no issues uploading photos and short videos to social media during the voyage. Cunard doesn't have an app, instead relying on the onboard Wi-Fi and a website that is dedicated to showing you your daily program and onboard spending account. Having connected to the internet, however, there was no way that I could access my onboard spending account or the daily program with the website. That was something that definitely needs to be looked at going forward. So, would I cruise with Cunard again? The answer is maybe. I honestly think there are much better alternatives available in the market, and I wouldn't choose to spend my money with Cunard unless there was something very unique to experience and enjoy, such as a transatlantic voyage on board QM2, which remains firmly on my bucket list. While I loved the ship, the venues, the cabin, and the inclusions, for me, poor service really let the experience down, particularly in the Princess Grill's restaurants. Having said that, I put the call out on social media for others to let me know what their experience was like in the Britannia restaurant, and here are a few excerpts. Well, let me know in the comments, would you try sailing with Cunard if you haven't? And if you have, was my experience some kind of anomaly, or is that just the standard fare? As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. And if you would like to follow my travels as they happen, you can give me a follow on Facebook and Instagram at The Cruise and Travel Guy. And for all of your cruise booking needs, you can head to my website, thecruiseandtravelguy.com.au. Thanks as always, and I'll see you soon. I'm Adrian, the Cruise and Travel Guy, and I've just returned from one of a what? And although the company is still headquartered in the UK, Onboard the ships, the currency of use is that. While they're not that elegance and sense of tradition, blah, blah, blah. Most cruise lines have now adopted a different sort of system that sees a ship within a ship. What? Cafe Corinthia. Cafe Corinthia also offered freshly baked pastries every morning and a short lunchtime hour. What? Overall, I was